in May of 2019, after having traveled to 180 of 193 countries, I traveled to Syria and I was taken hostage and accused of being an American spy and collaborating with terrorists. And things got pretty uncomfortable. But I did become the only American civilian that Bashar al-Assad had ever released from captivity, and thanks to a long list of people who worked on that case, I'm here today to talk about it and try to share some of the lessons and messages from that experience.
Welcome to Ask a Pro with Brock Montgomery, where pro athletes, coaches, and high performers share their stories, lessons, and advice to inspire the next generation. Each episode, I bring in questions directly from players and listeners so you can hear answers straight from the pros. Follow me on Instagram at Brock Montgomery, where I'll post who I'm speaking with next and give you the chance to submit your own questions. On today's episode, we talk with Sam Goodwin, a man who has truly seen it all, from his early hockey career to traveling to every country in the world, to even lacing up his skates in North Korea. Sam's story is one of grit and curiosity, but his journey took a dramatic turn when he was taken hostage in Syria, an experience that would change his life forever. In this episode, we dive into what drove him to chase such a wild goal and what he learned about people and the world along the way, and how he found strength during one of the most challenging experiences imaginable. Welcome, Sam Goodwin. Sam,
How's it going?
good. How are you, man?
Yeah, everything's great. Where are you? You're in Europe?
Yeah, my wife and I call the Netherlands home now.
Man, that's amazing. I need to get over and visit. My brother's still playing in Belfast.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we were in
Yeah.
contact there a while back about talking
Yeah,
about.
so I'm trying to think, like, I'm heading over there in December to see a couple games. So yeah, I'd get it over a little bit, but I'd love to connect somewhere.
Man, that'd be awesome. It'd be nice to have you over here.
Yeah. Are you on the ice much?
Yeah, almost every day. I coach.
Really?
I run youth programs over here, and I'm also still actually playing in the Dutch league. Sam. I'm
Yeah.
finally playing in the NHL,
Yeah, the Netherlands
the
Hockey League.
Netherlands Hockey League.
Oh man, that's amazing. That's great.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, yeah. So,
man,
man,
that's
if
awesome.
if you do plan on coming over here, it'd be awesome to have you out one time. It'd be
Yeah,
fun.
I would. Where in the Netherlands are you?
So our hometown is called Alkmaar.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a cool. To me, it's honestly one of the nicest places in the Netherlands. I think
Yeah,
it's like Amsterdam, but small, quiet, cozy little village kind of feel to it. So it's nice.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. How far is it from Amsterdam?
20-minute train ride. It's like a 30,
Okay, yeah,
30-minute drive. Nice.
that's awesome.
Where are you living
Yeah.
right now?
I live in DC.
Yeah.
I'm actually in St. Louis today. I'm just visiting my parents for a few days, but based in DC. So yeah, you're welcome there as well.
Yeah, nice. Oh, that'd be nice to go. I've actually never been to DC.
Yeah. No, it's all good. Do you go back to Canada much?
I do. I try and get home every summer as much as I can.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not going to be always possible. We were just back this summer visiting
Okay.
family and stuff. So
Is your wife, is she Canadian?
she's Dutch.
She's okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
That's how we ended up here. We actually when I originally retired from playing pro, we had actually planned on moving back to Canada. I originally got a job with the Calgary Fire Department there.
Okay.
And long story short, we decided that it wasn't the place for us to live, so we decided we were gonna make Europe home, and so we settled back in the Netherlands, and it's been a
Man,
great.
that's awesome. My brother is getting married to an Irish girl, and they're planning to live over there. So he's also making Europe home. So I
Oh, no way!
yeah, no, I can understand. And that's right. Are you in touch with John Niebrand at all?
It's so funny, man. He called me. We talk almost daily.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
we were on the phone before you called, actually. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
He's like, "No way, you're talking with Sammy. That's hilarious."
Yeah, no, that's great. We've stayed in touch just on social media and everything. So
Yeah, because you guys also went to a few more tournaments together, hey?
I mean, so you came over once, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah, I
first,
think
and I brought John over with me that first time.
right. And then that's right. And then he came, I mean, at least one more time.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe there was more, but
yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because I mean, some of the stuff I want to chat with you about, but I don't know if you really know. I know because through your career, some of the things I want to talk to you about with just kind of your career and stuff. Because I don't know, the reason I started actually kind of doing this little podcast here journey that I'm on is originally, so I run a youth program here in Alkmaar. And I just had an idea in my head that, I'd reach out to some of the guys I know, like Chris Knobloch, the head coach in Edmonton there, Sam
I
Ryan.
saw some of that interview. That was great.
Thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really nice of him to take the time. And
Yeah.
so my original idea was just to give the youth kids some exposure to, pros at the top of their game sort of thing. And so I just wanted to take questions in and try and have a call with them and get answered. Then it kind of inspired me to, I really enjoyed it, really kind of inspired, wanted to reach out to more people, kind of have some more conversations like that. And so, yeah, some of the questions that, a lot of the kids that'll be listening to our conversation as well are going to be young athletes and stuff like that. So as much as I obviously want to chat with you about, your big story.
But yeah, no, we can chat about anything. But yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
No, I appreciate that context.
yeah, I'd love to, chat about your earlier days as well in hockey. But one thing you probably don't actually know is how we actually ended up meeting. I know you talk a lot about, your family talks a lot about in your book about the 6 degrees of separation. But do you remember Tyler Elbert?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that year,
Was that how it came together? I was
yeah,
talking to him last week, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in 2000, I think it would have been 2016 or 17 is when you and I met. Then I was playing in Fort Wayne, and I actually had a couple injuries that year, and same as you, I had struggled with concussions through my career. And that season in Fort Wayne, had suffered a really bad concussion, and then going on to the end of the season, I worked so hard to get back in shape, where I was feeling really good towards the end of the season, like just to get back and be on the playoff roster. Long story short, the staff didn't think I was fully fit and ready to be on the playoff roster. Understandable. That's their call. But then, I think I'm kind of similar as you with the mindset, like everything happens for a reason. It was like 3 days after I was told I wasn't making the roster, and I was upset. I was very disappointed, obviously, not to be on the playoff roster. And then Tyler calls me and he's like, "Hey, Monty, you you want to go play some hockey still?" And I'm like, "Well, certainly, like, no, for sure."
Okay, so then that was the same year. That was the same time
Yeah,
when Tyler
exactly.
came over.
And
So
then
wait, so Tyler brought you, and then you brought John.
yeah, so
Is that
Tyler's like, he's like,
yeah.
"Yeah, if you want to come over to Hong Kong, we're going to play in this tournament." I'm like, I mean, I'll never turn down traveling and hockey. And then he's like, "Yeah, we need a D man," and I'm like, wow. You
Got my buddy John.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
he's like, no,
Yeah.
Johnny's like, they'll never want me. He's like, no, no, man. Like, honestly, you got to come. So
That's amazing. Yeah, I had forgotten about that detail. And I actually was talking to Tyler last week because he's in St. Louis and he started his own hockey um, school. And when I say school, I mean on ice and in the classroom. So
wow.
he runs camps and development programs. Hopefully, if he sees this, I'm characterizing it correctly. But he runs camps and development programs. But he also has a school, like an academic school, where
Oh,
kids
wow.
can essentially be part of this ecosystem of that he's created. So really, I mean, huge congrats to him for getting that going because he's impacting a lot of young players and doing a great job with it from what I can tell. So I was, he and I played together years ago, and I was actually in touch with him last week because he was asking about potentially having like my book as part of their school or having me come talk to the students. So, but it was good to talk with him and just a great guy.
Yeah, that's very cool. I'm going to have to reach out to him, pick his brain with what he's doing over there. Cause
Right. I was going to say, that's why I was saying, I think there's some overlap.
yeah, there is a little bit of overlap of what I'm trying to kind of set up over here as well. Right now we're just on ice, but it'd be cool to have a mixture of things like that. So
Yeah. No, it's
really
great.
cool. Yeah,
That's
nice.
great.
Yeah, and speaking of that, if you do come over, I would love to have you speak with the kids as well. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. Happy to. No, that's
Yeah.
great. Very
But
cool.
so Sam, how did your like? I mean, I know you went and played NCAA, but just your journey to like to go play NCAA. What exactly? How did that kind of start off for you? Because obviously, my route, I went to the Western League, but what was kind of the route that took you into college there in the States?
Yeah. Obviously the landscape looks a lot different now than it did 20 years ago, but, so yeah, to tell a quick story, I played AAA in St. Louis growing up and finished high school. I'm in St. Louis today, so I finished high school here. And then I tendered with Texas in the North American League. And I played 1 year there, the '07, '08 year. And then I was just actually mentioning this story the other day because that season ended and I had a pretty decent year. And my plan was to come back to Texas the following year. For whatever reason, I wasn't even going to go. I really like Texas, so I wasn't even going to go and try out in the USHL. I was like, I like it here. If I'm good enough to play in college, then I'll make it there. And that was just kind of my mindset, right or wrong. So I leave Texas to go home for the summer, and about 2 weeks later, I get a message that the organization, the Texas Tornado organization, has decided to take a hiatus for a year, and they're not going to have a team next year. And so this is, yeah, like April. And I thought, oh, okay, well, if that's the case and I have to go try out somewhere, then I'm going to go to the USHL. I'm going to try. I'm going to try. Like, I don't know how that's going to go, but I'm going to try. So I got invited to Sioux Falls, their camp. And this was at the end of May. I went up there for the weekend and I made the team. So uh, that was May. And for the next like 2 months, basically the whole summer, I was thinking that I would go to the USHL the next year. Throughout that summer, I was talking to a few different colleges. They were reaching out, but they were all saying, hey, we're going to watch you in Sioux Falls. And then, we're, maybe interested in talking to you after we watch you play in Sioux Falls. In the first week of August, Niagara called me and they said, hey, Sam, we're interested in you, but we're interested in you for this year. And I said, you mean like in 2 weeks? Like, truly, and in 2 weeks? They said yes. And so that was very different than the other conversations I was having. And so my mom and I went up there a couple days later for a visit. So grateful to say was offered a scholarship, and I thought about it for a few days and decided to go and play there. And so throughout that summer, I had planned to play at different points. I had planned to play in the North American League, the USHL, and then ended up in college all through a summer. So it came together last minute, but that was how I ended up at Niagara.
All right. Yeah. And you enjoyed your time in Niagara there?
I did. There's a lot of great things about Niagara. Its proximity to Toronto, the hockey mecca of the world. Their rink is on campus. Today the coach Jason Lammers, I think, does a fantastic job with the program, and so I'm proud to be an alum. And my experience there was really positive. It's a long winter in Buffalo. It's a lot of snow up there,
Yeah.
but for anyone today coming up, through juniors today, can certainly vouch for Jason and the program there. And I had a good experience.
Yeah. I'm curious, Sam, for your opinion. Obviously, I know the landscape's changed quite a bit over the years, but I get often asked by young guys over here different routes to go and get over into North America. If you were to take a kid, if you were to give some kids advice, they want to come over and be able to play NCAA. What do you think a good route would be for a young kid coming over to the States, like coming over to play juniors over in the States before ultimately trying to get that role in college?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that that's somewhat common. I actually spoke last week at the Green Bay Gamblers training camp, and there were a handful of foreign or Europeans on the team. There was a guy from the Czech Republic. I think there was a Russian or maybe two, and and they had made their way over to the USHL to play. I'm not exactly sure what their path was before Green Bay, but I think if there is a connection, the hockey world's small, so certainly use the network. And if there is a connection to getting into North American League team or USHL team, I think there's some opportunities there. And again, just as recently as last week, I saw that is happening, and so there could be some opportunities there.
Yeah. Okay. Ultimately, your career, ended with concussions. I'm no stranger to those as well. I know the effects that those can have on you during a season. And I mean, for for life, also just for the years that kind of follow, or days that follow, weeks that follow, whatever it may be. Every concussion is different. Every person is different. But how was it kind of for you? I know there's a lot of athletes that struggle with, that kind of silent injury of concussions. And it's something that's often not talked about now. Okay, it's a lot better nowadays, but I mean, when you and I were younger, it was almost like, you know, a shame if you were to have a concussion. You're kind of looked upon as a wimp kind of thing. But so how was that for you? Your kind of, your year of deciding not to play anymore.
Yeah, super frustrating, as you know. And one of the challenges with concussions is there's no like physical issue. Like someone can look at the person and say, "Oh, they look fine," but they're not fine. And so I had post concussion syndrome for 8 months. I had a headache every day, trying to not watch TV or have bright lights or loud noises or all these things. I tried all kinds of different things, and at the 8-month mark, the headaches did go away, and so grateful to say that it was determined I don't have the permanent brain damage. But I was told that if I had another one, I had about 6 or 7 of them, all varying degrees of severity, and I was told that if I got another one, it could lead to some permanent damage. So I just had to kind of make the decision that continuing to play wasn't the right thing, which was tough. Really, all I had done in my life was played hockey. That was what I cared about. That was what I loved, and so it was like a dream being ripped out from underneath me. But as you know, there's so many variables to it, and there's the rest of our life, and we need our brains to be functioning. And so it's a frustrating injury. My understanding is the protocols and the medical treatments come a long way. So hopefully that's getting better. But it was kind of ultimately what ended my formal playing career. But since then the game's been incredible to me and offered me a lot of other opportunities that that probably wouldn't have come if I would have tried to continue kind of playing professionally. So that was kind of how things came to an end for me. And looking back, it was it was the right decision, but certainly frustrating at the time.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a heartbreaking decision to have to make that yourself.
100%.
I mean,
Yeah.
hockey is one of those things that's, yeah, growing up. I mean, as young king, especially in North America, especially, I mean, kids also over here, like it's our identity, to a certain extent. You try your best to, have more intangibles about your life, but ultimately we were hockey players. That's what we grew up every day. That's kind of what we did, um, to have to lose that is pretty difficult.
Right. And then I found myself, to your point, I was 23 years old. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I'd never considered doing, anything else. And so there's there's a lot to consider there. It's daunting to think about, this whole other world that I'd never considered before. But at the same time, health has to be a top priority.
Yeah. And I mean, when one door opens, another 10 more open, it seems like. And for you, that's kind of what it seemed like. You just shifted completely once you moved over to Singapore, right? You moved over to Singapore, started with a company there. And then, I mean, that's one thing I also talk with kids about is hockey can open so many doors for you that, you don't have to make the NHL. Obviously, I understand that kids' goals are the NHL.
And it should be. That's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like even I look for myself as well, and for you, like hockey has taken me all over the world. You helped me bring me over to Hong Kong. I was able to play all over in Europe and see different things of the world. Now I was able to go over to. I just had a camp in Armenia of all places. Um, you know, Coaching in Austria, and it's just I have the game to thank for that, and all the friends I've met along the way, and there's so many different leagues and opportunities now to go play for hockey. And I mean, for yourself also, like one of the coolest things I think you did on your journey to travel to every country in the world is go over to North Korea. I want to hear a little bit more of you elaborating on that, what that kind of experience was like.
Yeah, I can definitely talk about that, but I'll mention that in this time when I was trying to figure out what the next step was going to be, I had this opportunity to to go to Singapore for essentially an internship. And I remember a quick story. I remember getting this kind of opportunity and thinking, like, this is crazy. I would never actually go. Like, where is that? I don't even know where Singapore is. Like, this is crazy. I would never actually do it. And then as I thought about it a little bit more, it it seemed like it seemed like something to consider. And I'll never forget. I said to as I was considering this, my father said to me, he said, "Sam, if if you go to Singapore, the worst thing that happens is you just come home." And you can do that anytime. And so I feel so blessed to have had that sort of safety net. And essentially that was like the foundation of my adulthood was my parents, my dad's comment. And that moment. So I went and I started this internship, and no joke, the very first day that I was at the office, very first day of work at lunch. So I had been working at this company for 3 hours, right? And one of the ladies, I'm like 24 years old. One of the ladies says, "Sam, I'll take you to lunch." So we get on like a little bus, and we go just down the road to a mall. And in the basement of the mall is a food court. And we walk inside, and we're about to go down to the basement. And I look up and I see a sign that has an arrow pointing to the next level, and it says ice rink. And at this point, I am in Singapore. I am 80 miles north of the equator. I'm in the tropics. I've never heard of a hockey player from Singapore in my entire life. So, but I see this sign, and I had to find out what was going on. So I said, her name was Eileen. I said, "Eileen, hang on a second. I need to go check. I need to go check this out." So I go up the escalator, and at the top of the escalator is a rink, full size rink, in a mall called the J Cube in Singapore. This is September of 2012, and there was, in addition to a rink, there was a little shop next to it, and there was a guy in there who turned out to be a Kiwi guy, and he was selling some like skates and sticks. He had a few things in the shop, and I went in, and my exact words to him was, I said, "Is there hockey here?" It was what because on the rink at the time there was like open skate and some people just messing
Yeah.
around.
But I mean, you're
He
in
said,
Singapore of all places,
I mean,
so
exactly, exactly. So he he says, "Yeah, there is a league, and there's a few different kind of levels." And so he connected me with the guy who runs the league, and I got in touch with him and kind of quickly determined that I could probably play in this league that was non-contact without injuring my head. And so long story short, I went on to live in Singapore for the next 6 years, um, and can talk about some of these experiences. But basically, hockey became my primary way of meeting people. All the players there were fellow expats from North America or from Europe, and that was the way that I really networked in the first 6 years of my career, was through the hockey community in Asia. And never could have expected that. But I think for any of the young kids growing up today, you were kind of hinting at this, and this doesn't have to happen in Singapore and Asia. It can happen anywhere. But I think that we have an opportunity to use the game to help us in a number of ways, personally, professionally, and it doesn't always play out as straightforward as it might seem. So I encourage people to use their experience in hockey as a way to network and to meet people and to find new opportunities.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's so many different connections, and I mean, you just think back to all the people that you've met throughout hockey. If you need advice on something, or if you're staying somewhere, whatever it may be, like there's
Yeah,
always
I
something.
met you playing hockey in Asia.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now here
Like
we
if
are.
you had told me that 20 years ago, I would like, this is, you're Canadian, I'm American. Like this is crazy. Is
Yeah,
there hockey? So, certainly opened my eyes to a lot of things.
yeah, no kidding. And so actually, it's hilarious. Like, and the thing I love about hockey is like, I know you kind of talk about it when your journey in North Korea is being able to just like hockey just kind of unites people. You can step on the ice with anybody. Actually, talking about John Nybrandt, when we went to my brother's wedding, we were over in Hawaii, and I just finished up surfing, and then John and I were walking back to our place, and we seen this ice hockey rink. It looked like an outdoor rink right along the beach, and we're like, oh, we got to go check this out. And there was kids over there, locals, just tearing it up playing roller hockey. And so John and I, we're maybe a bit too cocky. We were thinking, oh yeah, we'll go out there and we'll show them what's up, So we ask them super friendly, like, hey guys, you mind if we join you? Yeah, throw some gear on. There's gear over in the shed. So we go out there and, you know, Johnny looked like Bambi on ice and I wasn't any better out there. These guys were just buzzing around us but it was awesome. They were so welcoming, and it was one of those moments in life that you just kind of will never forget it, like how welcoming and nice they were, and just, yeah, hockey united us and brought us together over just, it was just awesome.
Yep,
So
absolutely. It didn't matter what the upbringing was, what the previous experiences were. When you got on the roller rink with them, you knew how to work together,
yeah.
the way that it brings people together is fantastic, as you said.
Yeah. And you're like, I listened to you talking about when you were in North Korea, and I'd love for you to elaborate on that because I know people would find it fascinating. But when you when you went over to North Korea, first off, what was it like going to North Korea? And then secondly, what was it like to play hockey there? And also, how did you get the experience again? I don't exactly recall.
Mhm. Yep. So this was in the spring of 2016. So at this point, I'd been in Singapore for about 4 years, and had started playing in these tournaments around in Hong Kong and Thailand and different places. And it's just through the hockey grapevine, through the community, there was word that there was a kind of this trip being put together in North Korea to go and coach and play against their national hockey team. And again, I'm in my 20s, just have this unrelenting curiosity, trying to experience new places and meet people and better understand the world. And this was just something that caught my attention, and I just really could not pursue. I learned a little bit more about it, and long story short, went over there for a week in March of 2016. I brought so our friend Rob Martini went with me
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, Rob. Yeah.
He was my college roommate in Niagara, and he ended up coming to work at the same company in Singapore. So we had been, on this journey, and there's a lot that I could say about this time in North Korea. I wrote a whole blog about it, talk about it a decent amount, but I had a fantastic experience, and we were treated incredibly well. We, Korean food is delicious, all of these things. I'm not oblivious to the fact that, I saw what they wanted me to see, and getting off that tourist track, things, unfortunately can look very different. But one of the most memorable things was using hockey to build a cultural bridge with these people. As I was kind of referencing your story in Hawaii, we got on that ice and nobody cared about political differences or demarcation lines or nuclear weapons, anything like that. We knew exactly how to work together to score goals. And our relationship ran like a Swiss watch, despite having not too many things in common from an upbringing and life experience standpoint. And so the players were more skilled than I expected. They skated better than I thought. They listened. They wanted to get better. I had to communicate through a translator, but they listened. They wanted to get better. They wanted to improve. They were getting ready for an IIHF tournament, I believe in Mexico at the time, depending on what division they were in at that point. But it was just really memorable to use a sport to build a connection with people that otherwise it might be a little bit challenging to build a connection with. And so that's one of my biggest takeaways from that. And did that in other places as well, but had a great experience there.
Yeah, that's cool. And like, did you feel, I mean, just North Korea just seems kind of like a untouchable place, but like, well, while you were there, besides the hockey, or maybe also during the hockey, but did you feel a bit, I don't know, uneasy or like worried at times that, hey, maybe this is not the greatest place to be? Or
A little bit for sure. And going in and learning about the trip and who was there was always a little bit of skepticism, a little bit of questioning what was going on, um, uh, which I think makes sense. I mean, for me on my travel journey, I went to every country in the world. Safety was always the top priority as much as it can be on a journey like that. But there's also this curiosity. And one of the things that I've learned on my journey is that the overwhelming majority of people in the world are well intentioned, proud of their country, happy to help others. It could go on and on about all the things that travel has taught me, like never judge people by the actions of their government. I've learned that people who have the least often give the most, something that I found to be true in all corners of the world. And the list goes on. And so certainly there was a little bit of uneasiness and wanting to be diligent and of course prioritizing safety. On the flip side, I never had a single issue there. I never felt, like I was dealing with, people who were, not having my best interest in hand. And so it's a constant balance, but certainly there were some questions and considerations when, I had the opportunity to visit, the Hermit Kingdom and these places that, that are lesser known or negatively perceived. So certainly, had some questions and had to just be a little bit more diligent.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you say that because touching on, everywhere I go, also, I feel the same that people generally are good. People for the most part, I feel like you say, I think that's great. Actually, how you kind of phrase it is, how did you phrase it? People are good except for their government. How do you phrase that?
Yeah. So one thing that I've learned is to just never judge people by the actions of their government. And
Right.
and,
That's
and
a great way to
oftentimes,
put it.
we have governments that disagree and they fight and all these things. But underneath that, there are people
Yeah.
just like us. And we're all fundamentally the same. We all eat, sleep, breathe, want to be happy, or chasing some kind of goal. And so there's a bond there despite what's happening with governments.
Yeah, that's such a great way to look at it. I mean, I would like to consider myself well traveled, but then when I'm talking to you, someone who's someone who's seen the entire world, then it's a bit different. But for the amount of the world I have seen, I couldn't agree more. Like the people that have the least give the most, and I don't know exactly like what it is that why do you think people do that? Like why is it where you go to some of those countries? Like my wife and I were in this place. We were volunteering at a school on an island called Sumba. It's a little Indonesian island, about 45-minute flight from Bali, and there's nothing there. Like the main currency is like they're still trading buffalo, and like there's nothing. But the people were some of the most friendly, happy people in the world, and they had nothing. And I just, it's hard to wrap your mind around it. It's just like it's unbelievable how giving they are. I don't know what.
That's been my experience as well. And, certainly, as a hockey player and growing up in North America, we have so many opportunities and so much perspective on things. But uh that's been my experience all around the world, kind of what you outlined. And it's an important perspective to have.
Yeah, what interesting to think about. But like, what has been for you a better teacher, either the lessons you've kind of gained through hockey or the lessons you have taken from traveling?
Certainly both. I both have been incredible educations. I talk a lot about the just the skills and traits that I developed from being a competitive athlete, the way that they've helped me in life today in ways I couldn't have expected, personally, professionally, relationally. The list goes on. And so I often try to tell, young players today that I don't even think they recognize the skills that they're developing. I certainly didn't. I didn't know. I mean, I started my career working for a tech startup business, which is one of the most volatile roller coaster professional environments to be in. And I was constantly leaning on these skills and traits, the mental toughness, critical thinking, resilience. How often have we had a boss or a coach tell us, control what you can control? I think athletes have this unusual ability to deal with failure and being told no. And we hear CEOs say all the time that they like to hire athletes. And so the list goes on. And so I often challenge young athletes, young hockey players to continue to develop these skills because they may not even realize what they're developing, but the harder they work now, the better prepared they'll be for ways that they're not even expecting. So certainly a lot came from being an athlete, but also travel. I mean, I think travel is potentially the best education I've ever had. Just some of the things we've talked about, the perspective that comes from it. It's taught me to be comfortable being uncomfortable, about the power of perspective. It's taught me how to let expectations take a back seat and replace stereotypes with real experiences. And so there's just for me, it was always about this curiosity and trying to learn more.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Same thing for hockey and all the things that you don't really realize you're learning. But at the end of the day, like even I think back for myself, like applying for Calgary Fire Department. That was, I think, one of the main reasons I ended up ultimately getting that job was because I had that hockey background. They had that camaraderie. I knew how to work in a team well. I knew how to work under pressure, and I think that those kind of things all kind of stem back into helping out. Um, Now I want to get into a bit of the kind of the main topic. I'm sure you have been talking about lots, but when your book first came out, so for the people that would be just listening, but you're one of the only, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're the only American civilian to be released by the Assad regime. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, and can give a quick overview. So, as I briefly mentioned, I from about 2010 to 2020, in those 10 years approximately, I traveled to every country in the world, and but like any worthwhile venture or endeavor in life, it wasn't without its challenges, and perhaps most notably, referencing my book. In May of 2019, after having traveled to 180 of 193 countries, I traveled to Syria, and again, a lot that I could talk about here. It's outlined in my book, but I was taken hostage and accused of being an American spy and collaborating with terrorists, and things got pretty uncomfortable, and really just so grateful. Thank God, thanks to a long list of people who worked tirelessly, I was released after being held for 9 weeks in some pretty uncomfortable situations, and can kind of go into do as much or as little as you're interested in. But I did become the only American civilian that Bashar al-Assad had ever released from captivity, and thanks to a long list of people who worked on that case, I'm here today to talk about it and try to share some of the lessons and messages from that experience.
Yeah, I mean, man, so when your book first came out, credit to you, by the way, it's an amazing book. It's so well put together, and I think it kind of encapsulates as much of the emotion as I think you could probably put into a book. But when it first came out, I read the book first, and then when I knew we were going to have a discussion again, I ended up listening to it, and I actually, in my perspective, I really enjoyed listening to it, just maybe because I also know you, I know your voice, and just listening to you narrating it was I don't know, man. When I was listening to it, I just I was almost brought to tears when you were finally being released, because just the way you talk about the story and everything, I don't know, I was just like overwhelmed with emotion. Just thought how what an amazing story, but how thankful that you ended up being alive. But if you can just kind of, without giving away too much of the book, ultimately, I think it's just would be a great read for anybody. I think there's so much to unpack in it. Obviously, we're not going to unpack it all now, but can you just take me through those first few days, or let's say first day, even just where you got stopped at the border there, stopped, or at the roundabout, I think it was, and taken into captivity? What were you thinking, and how did you even? Just, yeah, what were you thinking at that moment?
I was well. Thanks for talking about the book, and if anyone's interested in checking out, it's called Saving Sam, and it's available everywhere that books are sold. But um, I was I was scared, confused. I had no information or anyone to help. I was desperately trying to understand what was happening. And as we sped down back alleys of the city, the officers in the vehicle, they accused me of espionage, of being an American spy. and nothing like this had ever happened to me before. So there's I was stunned and in disbelief about what had happened in just a few short minutes. My life was spiraling out of control in the most terrifying of ways. I felt, um, I'll tell you, bro, I felt exactly the way they wanted me to, hopeless, and utterly cut off from any control of my life.
Yeah. Oh man, like it's hard to even comprehend what you would have been going through. Like, I try and imagine, but it's like, yeah, I think even when I'm getting, grilled even just, I think when we were going to Georgia and the border guy was asking me for information at the control stop, how nervous you kind of get there. I couldn't
Comfortable.
imagine. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's such an uncomfortable feeling, and you're not even doing anything wrong. I couldn't even comprehend what you had to have been going through, being in Syria, getting taken hostage, and just being like, what now? And how, yeah, how were you able to? I mean, just be sitting in a cell like that. If you kind of go back, if you can take me back to even how hockey had helped you get through that, and maybe certain things you've maybe learned throughout your playing days that kind of could take you into, you know, ultimately sitting there not knowing what to do.
Mhm. Yeah, there were. So I spent my 2 months were essentially split. I was held for the first month in solitary confinement, and then was moved for the second month to a more kind of general population setting. And in that first month, there were a range of areas or places where I found strength. I leaned on perspectives that I developed from traveling to different corners of the world, which provoked gratitude for just the basic food and water I was being given. I leaned on a belief that I had a purpose in life and a desire to see family and friends again. I leaned mostly on my faith and prayer, but I also leaned on kind of like I was mentioning a couple minutes ago, but I leaned on a lot of the skills and traits that I developed from being a competitive athlete. Found a lot of strength in those, just as part of the, in addition to everywhere else that I was finding strength. It was all kind of this collective effort. But I mentioned the mental toughness, critical thing, all of that. I also remember thinking about like coaches that I had who had been, tough on me, and maybe that was all to help with this, and kind of in this very dramatic way. And again, this is part of a much bigger kind of picture of like, I hope that I don't die today or have my head cut off or die in a pretty gruesome way, like truly some of those things. But when I think about all of the areas where I did find strength, it may sound a little bit strange to say, but there were just these things that I had taken from being an athlete that helped. They helped. It wasn't as if, all I leaned on were things from being an athlete, but it was part of it was part of the situation. And not to draw like a weird parallel, but it was the same as in business or in life, in our relationships, where we use things or I had used things from being an athlete. I used a lot of those same things in a little bit different way, like in
Yeah.
solitary confinement of a prison cell. But it just goes back to, I try to encourage people to, particularly young athletes, to really work on developing the skills that they're being pushed to develop, because they just never know when or how they'll need them later in life.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, your experience is the extreme of extremes that people would maybe need to use those skills, but yet you never know. Um,
Mhm.
like, so Sam, when you're sitting there, it was 27 days in solitary confinement to start off with, right? And and you're sitting there, you're trying to keep track with it, making little ticks on the rocks with a calendar, by yourself in the room there. I was wondering as I was listening to your book, like, are you sitting there thinking, man, obviously you're thinking, I got to get out of here. But are you running through your head, like, how am I going to get out of here? Because, I mean, I don't know what the situations look like in there. I can only assume Syrian prisons probably aren't up to par with how they are in America. So maybe are you thinking like, hey, I can sneak out of here somehow? Or what's going through your mind about how you're going to get out? Because ultimately the rest of it is out of your control other than what you could do in the prison.
Yep. Absolutely, and that control what you can control became huge. Many things, maybe the majority of things were out of my control. I couldn't control when or even if I'd be released. I couldn't control whether they finally figured out I wasn't a spy, but I could control my thoughts, my attitude, my prayers. I could control my exercise. I did push-ups, sit-ups, core exercises. I could control how much water I drank and when I went to sleep at night. And I could control my routine within that cell. And my goal wasn't to get rid of negative thoughts and feelings. That's unrealistic. My goal was to change the way I responded to them. And one of the most challenging parts of this whole situation was the uncertainty. So based on the information that I believed all of these different options were on the table. So was I going to be released in 5 minutes? Well, based on the information I had, I believed that was possible.
Mm.
Was I going to be in that cell forever? I thought that was possible. Was I going to be released in a week? Were they going to open the door and shoot me or torture me or stop feeding me? Based on the information I had, I believed all of these things were possible, and trying to entertain them 24 hours a day was emotionally and psychologically exhausting. And this is the topic of uncertainty is primarily what I speak about today, and how we can more effectively embrace and manage it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you talk lots about, I mean, when you go speak, it's winning through uncertainty is kind of your main headline. And what exactly kind of through your time in prison, like kind of propelled you to make that kind of your key topic? I know you kind of just touched on it a bit more, but can you elaborate a little bit more on just the uncertain, like there would have been so many uncertainties the whole time. I mean, I even think back to when you got transferred to what was the second prison call again? Ahmad or
Adra.
Adra, sorry.
Yep.
Adra. And then ultimately, you're there thinking, hey, like now you're thinking maybe a bit more positive, but then you get taken back to 215 and like, I mean, just what a roller coaster ride. But can you touch a little bit more on the uncertainties that you kind of went through that whole time?
Sure. And I'll mention, I mean, today in our world, there is so much uncertainty, especially for our business leaders, our entrepreneurs. And when I think about my time in that situation, there were three key things where I found strength. One was leaning into gratitude. Two was to control the things that I could control. And the third was to recognize this uncertainty as an opportunity. And all of those things sound on the surface a little bit counterintuitive. And this is going to how I this is what I talk about, but it's about this. It's about this framework. So it's one thing to be grateful. It's another thing to control what we can control. It's another thing to recognize uncertainty as an opportunity and do those things in isolation. But what I encourage people to think about is to adopt this framework, these 3 points in that order. That is a way that we can win through uncertain times. And that helped me. And I think it can help all of us in our personal, professional, spiritual lives when we're facing our own forms of uncertainty.
Yeah. And kind of leaning into that uncertainty and so like I think just for myself, I mean, I'm certainly for you as well, like uncertainty, like kind of instead of running away from those uncertain times, really leaning into those. And sometimes that's when you have the biggest breakthroughs, I feel like, is when you're uncertain
100%.
what's that,
Yep.
sorry?
100%. When things are uncertain, everything is possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. And like I think back to some of their tactics and stuff that they were talking with you about, like just the mental, I mean, just I feel like just the mental fortitude to go 60 days or 63 days in captivity. Um, and the mind games they were playing with you and everything, you couldn't trust anything that they were saying. I think back to even when you were talking about when they were asking you how many countries you had been to and you had to answer and they came to being 12 left over, and just that mind game sitting there for whatever it was, you said 12 hours being interrogated that one day and then having to do it again the next day. Just, I think just the mental fortitude that you had to have gotten through that would have been exhausting mentally. I mean, you're physically exhausted, but mentally you had to have been just drained.
Yeah, no doubt. I think to that particular story, I think they truly believed that I was potentially some kind of threat to their national security, and they were going to figure that out. And they had a range of ways to try and do that. A lot of them were not very comfortable, and I was just exhausted and so overwhelmed. But and these stories are outlined kind of in the book, and where I found strength. But it was certainly, I was lied to so many times over the months, and trying to make sense of everything, and just tried to stay as level headed as I could. But it was it was a battle, and ultimately here today, and it's there was it was such an incredibly tough and uncomfortable time, no doubt. But truly, there's been so much good that's come from this situation. And people ask me quite a bit, Sam, if you could go back, would you still travel the way you did, or would you do anything differently? And on one hand, I would never want to relive captivity and wouldn't wish that on anybody. But on the other hand, and I think more importantly, I would also never want to give up everything that's come from it. The opportunity to meet some incredible people, to grow in character and in faith and in understanding of the the stuff in life that actually matters. And so those two things go together, making it kind of a tough question to answer sometimes.
Yeah, I could only imagine. And also from a family perspective as well. I mean, it had to have been such a strain on your family, but the, I mean, just, I mean, it's all in your book, but like the, the depths at which your parents had to go through to help try and get you out as well. I mean,
I mean,
has
one of
that
the most
made you
one of
guys?
the most overwhelming things for me was learning about when I was released, learning about everything that happened on the outside while I was trapped on the inside. None of which I knew anything about. And it's actually, so it's 6 years later now, and I'm still learning about things that happen. I'm learning about people who called a friend or said a prayer or talked to someone to try and do something. And it's really, it's overwhelming to hear about all of these things that happen. And I think when someone is taken hostage or wrongfully detained, it's not just torture for that person. There's also a family that's going through the hardest thing they've ever gone through in their life, something nothing can prepare them for. So just puts a lot into perspective there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people probably when they think about it, I think some people can think that you are being, I'm not sure what the word would be, maybe irrational or whatever it is to go
Oh,
to
yeah.
Syria. But I think of it from a different perspective a little bit. I think you, the world needs people like you to kind of break down those barriers. And okay, it's a terrible situation which happened, but I think about how when you were in prison, and you were able to have those connections with the people in the prison, and you, like you say in the book, like all the good people are in the prison, and all the bad people are the ones putting the good people in the prison. But you're able to be over there and make those connections with those people, and whatever those small little connections are, kind of, I think, give those people maybe a little bit of hope to help, spread the word throughout the country and maybe make a change.
Mhm. I think you're right. There's so much that I can say about that. Obviously, as I mentioned, on a journey like this, safety is always the top priority. I don't go looking for trouble. I don't think it's cool to be in unsafe situations. Um, at the same time, certainly there were people who thought this was irresponsible. The whole travel journey was irresponsible. I mean, my brother David, he talks about it in the book, and I think it's one of, and he's a pro hockey player. He plays, played at Penn State, played at Belfast, plays in Belfast now, and he had the thought that I think a lot of people had was, hey, I'm upset about this. I think this was irresponsible. And I think there were other ways that this could have been done. And I think that's totally, normal. I think it's one of the most important parts of this story. I think it humanizes it. It's also true. It's actually what happened. Um, at the same time, though, I will agree with you. We need people who are going out and finding the positivity and meeting people, and so it's a constant balance there. But certainly, my family went through something very significant, and I felt this combination. I felt this guilt over this combination of worry and sadness that I knew they must have been experiencing. But today we're all kind of dealing with it. Happy that it ended peacefully, but all kind of dealing with it in different ways.
Yeah.
But I think the perspective that you mentioned there is important, and I'm very aware of that.
Yeah. I think one of the most amazing things about that story as well is well, thinking back to like the government's ability to, make a difference in getting you out. I mean, it didn't seem like there was much being done from their side. I'm sure there was a lot more behind the scenes than we know or you even know as well.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think I kind of say this to people a lot as well. Like, I think you do have to oftentimes take things into your own hands. You can't just wait for someone to do something. Not saying that you wouldn't have got released, but if your family, I think, ultimately didn't take matters into their own hands, it might not have been such a good, ending for you. And I think,
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right. And the people in the government who worked on my case, incredible people. I know many of them today. And as you mentioned, I am confident there are tons of things that happen that I don't know about, that my family doesn't know about, that we'll probably never know about. And that's fine. As far as we know, it was really my family who found this connection to the Lebanese and was able to facilitate it. And there's a lot to say there about connections and the 6 degrees of separation and our networks and all of that. But I do think you make a great point about taking action. And on one hand, we need to be strategic, and we need to think and be aware. At some point we have to take action, and that's the case in business, as an athlete, in so many different facets of life. And as my family, even like I think about Stephanie and her college roommate. For anyone who will read the story, you'll learn about it. But roommate Steph, she could have said, hey, um I'm really sorry to hear about this. I will pray for you, or I will do it. But you know what she did? She took action. She said, no, let me try to do something here. And so, I think maybe sometimes millennials problem solve a little differently, and so forth. But especially after being told, don't tell anybody, and, could
Mhm.
jeopardize Sam's safety and his life or whatever it may be. But I think there's certainly a lesson in there on taking action. We have to take action if we want to get the results.
Yeah. And I won't ruin it for those that want to listen, because I think it's just such a cool ending. But that's actually a great point, is oftentimes also you have to have luck on your side. But what I feel that people will say is, when they're discussing with people about, oh, they'll look at some people's lives and they'll say, oh, you're so lucky. You're so lucky for this. You're so lucky you can do this. Okay. But what you're not also seeing is that, the thousands of times that that person's been denied. You have to take action. You have to try different things. You can't just sit on your couch and expect good things to happen to you. Like,
I
good
think we're
things.
we're not yeah, we're not seeing the thousands of times that the person was denied, and we're also not seeing the thousands of hours that people put in to set themselves up to be lucky. We have to put ourselves in a position to even have that opportunity.
Exactly. And so many people just see the Instagram real life, they think, oh, that person is so lucky. But yeah, exactly to your point, like, you're not seeing all the hours going into putting themselves in that position. And I think that ultimately is kind of what happened also with your family, is so they tried everything. And
Mhm.
for sure, there was luck on your guys' side, but they went to the ends of the earth, it seems like, to try and get you out of it. I mean, and that's what people learn at the end of the book, is it kind of comes together that Assad eventually knew that everybody was trying to get you out, and you seemed like a hot commodity, and they were a bit unsure why. But it's, yeah, because Sam's family went to the ends of the earth to try and get this kid out.
Yeah, no, it's really extraordinary, and obviously, I'm just so grateful to be here. But I think, yeah, the taking action, as you were mentioning, also the network and reaching out to people and building relationships is so important. And it kind of reminds me of the question that you asked earlier in this call about people who want to come over potentially to North America. I mean, it's so much about networking and who we know and reaching out and building relationships. I mean, our world runs on relationships today, and so I agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah. And ultimately, I mean, I kind of always go back to that. I mean, it's a bit cliche, but you have to go through the darkness to kind of have that, that spark, that shine. You got to go through the dark times to have the good times. You went through what I would consider the extreme of the dark times, but we'll wrap this up here soon. I know we've been already going for an hour, but I just would like to hear from your perspective again. You go through just this terrible time, 63 days in captivity, and you then realize you're going to be free. In my mind, I would just melt down when I get out of that vehicle for the first time over in Lebanon. I couldn't imagine how that felt. Can you just walk me through quickly how that felt to be free?
Yeah, sure. So I was taken into Beirut to the head of Lebanon's internal security. It's kind of like, say, the FBI in the United States. And when I walked into the office, in addition to dozens of government and military intelligence officials and journalists, my parents were there. And it was just this culmination of a moment that was indescribably emotional, and one that many people thought would never happen. This just breathtaking display of God answering prayers. But what I often say is, if this if this story were to ever be adapted as a film or something on screen, what happened in that moment would not need to be dramatized at all. We could just take the CCTV footage from
Right.
inside that office and just put it on the screen. It was as dramatic as anything that that I've experienced.
Yeah. Oh man, I can only imagine. I hope one day that this does become a movie. That would be that would be unbelievable. I think it would be such a great film. We just My wife and I just watched the movie the other day. It was terrible. I'm just thinking, man, Sam's got to have his own movie. Like,
Well, we'll see. We put the book out, and there actually has been quite a bit of interest in potentially doing that. But my family and I are just kind of gathering information and learning a little bit more about what's possible. We're not super familiar with the entertainment industry and how all that works. But if there is a way to share it and reach more people and share this message of positivity and hope, then we're certainly open to doing that, assuming that we're working with people who understand and respect the sensitivity of everything that
yeah,
went into it, and so we'll see, but certainly open to that.
yeah, nice. And last question here for you, Sam. Just kind of metaphorically speaking, for those people I know, I mean, depression, mental illness is something that's big in our day now. Day and age is kind of more talked about, but for those people that maybe metaphorically kind of live in you could say a prison of their own mind, or someone that is struggling internally, maybe not not physically, but someone that's just, let's say, metaphorically in their own prison. Is there any advice that you could kind of give those people to help them you know deal with that?
I think we could be held hostage by anything, as you were saying: alcohol, drugs, illness, relationships, finances, as an athlete, injuries. But the way that we embrace and manage those challenges, the actions we take, I think that defines who we become and from where we begin again. And I think we're all stronger and more resilient than we can imagine. And uncertain times are exactly what we need in order to grow.
I couldn't agree more. Hey, I appreciate your time, Sam. I think that's a good spot to end it on. Thanks for the call. Wish you nothing but success. What's for the future here, for the next foreseeable future for you?
Well, thanks so much for having me. And congratulations on all of your success. I am, as I mentioned, in St. Louis right now for a few days, visiting my parents, and gonna head back to DC on Thursday. And things are good, just plugging away. I'm grateful to say, pretty busy with speaking, and so
Nice.
heading to do some of those this fall, and looking forward to everything that's ahead.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you giving me a call. I'll try and share as much as possible I can about where you can get your book. I don't know if you want to share. Is there a certain spot that people can kind of follow you best on, or?
Yeah, sure. So feel free to reach out if anyone listening wants to reach out. Sam Goodwin. I'm on all the normal social media platforms. The book's called Saving Sam. It's available everywhere that books are sold. And if you're interested in checking that out, please do. And feel free to reach out anytime. I would love to connect with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sammy.
Yeah,
Have a good
thanks,
one.
Brock.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Ask a Pro. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube so you don't miss the next one. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Brock Montgomery. That's where I'll post upcoming guests and give you the chance to submit your own questions. Until next time, keep asking, keep learning.